have so much to share that they are able to go ahead and share their thoughts and their stories tonight. And that is it. So we will go ahead and get started. We are a few minutes late. And again, my name is Gabrielle Spat. I'm the founding executive director of the Blue Dove Foundation. We are so glad to see so many of you here this evening. While there's a special time between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur that's happening, and tonight's program is focused on recovery and repentance and this special time that comes between there. And it's this time of teshuvah, right? Meaning returning, the returning to God for some, but also a return to a healthier version of ourselves. In the coming year, a concept that is close, if not identical, to recovery in a parallel way. That is why we're hosting this program tonight, to educate communities on how to help those undergoing this process and have the best chance at recovery. For me, this topic is actually really special that we're doing right now. I lost my younger sister, she was 30. I lost her 4 years ago tomorrow, actually, to an opioid overdose. And so she was in and out of recovery. And so it's kind of ironic that this topic comes at the time that it's coming. And we have 3 special speakers this evening who are going to share some knowledge, some insight, and some stories with us. So the Blue Dove Foundation focuses on mental health, education, awareness, and outreach through a Jewish lens. And Beit Teshuvah, our partner on this program, is a unique community that empowers individuals and families to live meaningful lives through spirituality, psychotherapy, the 12 steps, and Jewish teachings. So our 2 organizations work completely in line with one another and support and empower each other. And tonight we'll hear from Rabbi Joseph Shamash, who's the spiritual counselor and manager of the Elaine Bresno Institute at Beit Teshuvah. Rabbi Shamash is a Persian cowboy born in Dallas to Iranian immigrants. Joseph currently serves as the spiritual counselor at Beit Teshuvah, a full-time Jewish residential treatment facility. And we'll hear from Adam, who is an alumnus of Beit Teshuvah, and Douglas Rosen, who is the director of the Partners in Prevention Department at Beit Teshuvah. So we have a wonderful program this evening. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rabbi Joseph to share some knowledge with us and put us in this time of thought, of learning, of time to get to know each other and to bring our Jewish connection. So, Rabbi?
Hi, thank you so much, Gabby. It's such an honor to be here and see so many familiar faces as well, not only from the Beit Teshuvah community, but this partnership as well that we are forging with Blue Dove is so important to us as well. And so really the talk that I've been thinking about during these during Rosh Hashanah, during high holidays, during this time of Elul, where is really inviting us to do the tshuva, is from a verse in Deuteronomy. God places before us today blessing and curse, right? Blessings and curse, right? Life or death, and choose life. It's pretty, black or white almost. It's pretty simple, right? There's blessings and curses, and there's life and death. Choose life, choose the blessings, right? Who wants to actually choose destruction, despair, choose death, right? And the truth is, it's not so simple. It's not so simple to always choose life or choose blessings. You don't have to be an addict in recovery to know that our choices, sometimes we don't always make the wisest choices, that the things that we intend to do versus what actually comes out in action. I know for me, I can say all the time that I'm not going to let my anger get the best of me. I'm not going to avoid the needy person on the side of the street. I'm going to be kinder to my parents or to my wife or those who love me. And in reality, I miss the mark all the time. I falter. And so when I don't choose life and I don't choose blessing, then what happens, right? When I'm filled with that shame and frustration and that guilt that comes about when I miss the mark or when I choose a different path, then what? Then what, right? In a lot of ways for me, it's okay, choose life, but then when I don't, choose tshuva. How do we have a way back? How do we have a way that our tradition, God sends a safety line, an invitation to return to our greater selves, to God, to our community, and really rebuild the path that we fell off of. And I think that's really the special time that we're living in right now. That is so special about the Jewish calendar is that as a community, we are all engaged in this work right now. Right? For the last 40 days leading up to Yom Kippur, we are engaged in communal tshuva, of taking an cheshbon hanefesh, an accounting of the soul, of looking at all the ways that we have done well, right? Because an accounting always has assets as well as liabilities, right? We have to really praise ourselves for doing the things that we've done. Because I don't know about you, I might be a little bit more of a perfectionist. I can see all the 99 things that I've done well, but that one thing that just didn't go my way or the error that I made, I will dwell on that a lot more. So I need to actively focus and make more of a spiritual practice to be in gratitude, to praise myself for doing the things that I've done well, especially the times where I don't want to do it. Right? To really boost up the assets of the ways that I have hit the mark. And then of course, we never arrive. We are never perfect. We are always human becomings. So what have I learned about the ways that I have sowed destruction? Is there something that I have, is there a pattern that I can figure out and think of and make amends and do tshuva for ways that I can be better in 5782? So that I no longer, I choose death and destruction a little bit less this year. And give myself credit for the things for the blessings that I have and the blessings that I sow. And so that's really what I've been working on. That's really what I've been hoping to focus on during the high holidays, during this time of tshuva. And I think the beauty of these conversations, and I hope what we can, it's not just going to be a frontal us talking to you. We want to hear what you're struggling with. How are you choosing blessings or curse, and how can we support you? How can the residents, and you're going to hear a wonderful story from our former resident Adam very shortly, which I'm very excited. And these stories of redemption can heal, and the methodology and the wisdom of the Jewish tradition really is not just for people who are broken. It's really trying to get to the bottom of the human experience. How do these texts really talk about the difficulties of being human? And so I'm really grateful for this space. I'm really grateful for the Blue Dove Foundation, because we can talk about the things that are underneath the surface. What are the spiritual components? What are the mental health components that go underneath our our addictions, whether it's from substance abuse or our addictions to our problems, which are probably far greater than the substances we abuse. And I hope we can explore that together in this space. So, Shana Tova to everyone. I hope this year is filled with choosing life and blessings. And I also want to say, like, and when we don't, God's always extending God's hand as an invitation to return, to repent, to repair, and to respond. So thank you for your presence. To repent, to repair, and to respond.
Rabbi, thank you. Rabbis have such a way of sharing, and you can do it in such a personal way in a place where there's so many of us. Thank you so much for sharing. And as the rabbi mentioned, this is a safe space. With technology, we can create that safe space of this small group, but reach so many more. And how we're doing this on Facebook. So if you are following us and you are here and you feel compelled to share what's happening tonight, please go to the Blue Dog Foundation and Beit Teshuva. You can share the Facebook Live link, and it'll also be available after too. And with that, we also have the chat. And as Rabbi said, this is a conversation. If you have a thought or a question that you want to share, please enter that in the chat, and we'll keep an eye on that and be sure to share that with the presenters. And at the end, after Doug speaks, we'll also be able to go ahead and go through some of the chat too and do a little Q&A. And next, Adam, who's here, as Rabbi mentioned, is an alumnus of Beit Teshuva, and he is going to join us and share his story, which is a personal story. And this is ultimately how the Blue Dog Foundation was actually founded. We believe in storytelling. We believe in finding a way to learn from others. And it's based on the idea of quieting the silence, of stopping the silence, of sharing, of being able to tell a story that will connect with someone else, that will hopefully make a difference in that person's life. And so Adam is one of those people. It's why I shared, my story very quickly of losing my younger sister. And there's much more of that online, but it's a value that Blue Dove has to share stories, to save a life. And so Adam, thank you for diving deep, sharing your vulnerability and your story with us.
Thank you, Gabby. My name's Adam Rubin. I'm a grateful member of the Beit Teshuva community. I'm also a recovering addict. First, I want to thank the Blue Dove Foundation for hosting the event. Both in Judaism and in recovery, there's a great emphasis put on remembering the past. Now, the only way to remember it is to continue to tell that story. And here's mine. My father was a well-known anti-war activist named Jerry Rubin. He passed away when I was 5 years old after being struck by a car jaywalking outside of our apartment building. I had severe depression as a child. When I was 10 years old, I was seriously considering committing suicide and subsequently put on Prozac. And at 12, I discovered marijuana and became obsessed with it. Smoking from morning until night was just my way of life. A couple years later, I stumbled upon a little pill called Xanax. Now, this was before the opioid epidemic, so the dangers of prescription drugs weren't really talked about at the time. All I knew was that the pill was for anxiety, and that when I took it, it felt as if the volume had been turned down and I didn't even know it was turned up to begin with. It made me feel lighter than a feather. What felt like the key to freedom would quickly become my ultimate prison. I needed it just to feel okay and would desperately obsess about it when it wasn't in my grasp. As a senior in high school, it was 3 a.m. I had been taking Xanax and smoking weed for many, many days nonstop. I crashed my car going over 90 miles per an hour, ended up overturned, wrapped around a light pole. and was removed from the vehicle by the jaws of life. A helicopter was called in. The police closed both directions of the PCH down. I was airlifted to the UCLA Medical Center, wheeled into the same ICU my father had died in 13 years prior. I was put on a ventilator as my lung was too bruised to inflate on its own. Fractured skull, broken hip, shattered wrist, bruised tailbone, internal bleeding, lacerations all over my face and body. It was truly horrific. The accident immobilized me for many months. It left a psychological scar that only compounded my addictions. As an adult, my drug dependence steadily progressed. I had seizures, overdoses, bounced in and out of institutions, rehabs, psych wards, detoxes, homeless shelters, halfway houses, and more. Never able to string together more than a few months of sobriety at a time. I went to rehabs all over the country: Washington State, Minnesota, Kentucky, Florida, New Mexico, Utah, all over my home state of California. Everywhere I went, I found some way to talk myself back into getting high again. I felt an emptiness in my chest that I couldn't explain. Life felt meaningless. The pattern of rehab and relapse lasted for 15 years. I felt like I was the passenger of a car, unable to control what my next stop would be. Fortunately, eventually, that road took me to Beit Teshuvah. Now, I was a regular at a synagogue in the San Fernando Valley. One day I nodded out during Shabbat services, only to be woken up by a rabbi who told me about Beit Teshuvah. Baruch Hashem for that day and for that rabbi. When I stumbled into Beit Teshuvah, I immediately knew I had found something innately different and profoundly special. For one thing, it truly isn't about money here. I came here using Medicaid insurance, and when that insurance ran out, I was put on scholarship. I didn't even know. I wasn't even notified of the change. No one is turned away from the doors because of an inability to pay. It truly shocked me. I'd never seen anything quite like it. Upon entering Beit Teshuvah, I received a treatment team. They worked collaboratively to help me. I had a spiritual advisor, a counselor, a therapist, even a psychiatrist. I got to meet with each one weekly. My therapist I met with twice a week. Now, even that cannot compare to the love and support I found among my fellow residents here. We have a kinship and bond that is indescribable. If you could see us on a Friday night, dancing, laughing, crying, and praying together, you might be able to understand it. At an early age, I fell in love with drugs. I formed a bond with them that at one time seemed unbreakable. When I was separated from them, it really felt like a broken heart. I could not remove such an integral part of my life if I didn't put something in its place. At Beit Teshuvah, I found what I had been missing. That is connection with fellow human beings and with Hashem. I realized that that has always been what I needed, and drugs were just an attempt to fulfill that necessity. As our founder, Harriet Rosetto, likes to point out, the opposite of addiction is connection. Anyone who knows me knows that I'm a proud Jew. It is a huge part of my identity. It's a great source of inspiration for me. We as Jews have faced insurmountable odds throughout history, yet have maintained our peoplehood through fierce determination, faith, and action. Exploring how recovery is perceived through a Jewish lens has been both eye-opening and deeply moving. I began to read the Torah and see myself in the characters. I found myself in the Torah, which in turn brought it to life. We Jews have stayed loyal to our moment of revelation at Mount Sinai through action. In that spirit, I'm staying loyal to my moment of revelation through action. This includes prayer, regular 12-step work, staying connected to the friends I've made here. I started as a resident at Beit Teshuvah, and now I'm a clinical staff member. 95% of the staff at Beit Teshuvah are graduates of our program. I look at Beit Teshuvah more as a synagogue than I see it as a rehab center. Beit Teshuvah is a tight-knit congregation of seekers, seeking life, seeking God, and seeking purpose. We recognize that within each human is the Yetzer Hara and Yetzer HaTov. and that balancing these forces is the only way to redemption. We cannot simply block out the bad. We have to acknowledge both as necessary parts of life. I've discovered my passion. I started school to be a drug and alcohol counselor, and am deeply enjoying learning about treatment from the other side, so to speak. I want to help those who suffer from the same ailment I have. This is where my heart is. I realized that the emptiness I felt in my soul for so many years was actually a sense of duty. It was a call to action, beckoning me to lift up my fellow man. As a light among the nations, it is only the Jewish thing to do. Shana Tova, and I would like to wish everyone a meaningful fast. Thank you, Blue Dove Foundation, for hosting this event, and thank you, Beit Teshuva, for saving my life.
Adam, thank you for sharing. That was really powerful. I don't know if you see the chat, but there are several people already saying, thank you for sharing. And that is really what makes a difference in showing people that eradicating the shame and stigma and the generosity of Jewish people and organizations can make a difference. And Doug is going to join us now. Doug Rosen is a clinician, as I mentioned, and he is going to talk about recovery from more of a clinical perspective.
Right. Thank you, and thank you for sharing so much, Adam. That was great, and I think you touched on I think the most impactful part of treatment. I mean, treatment. There are tens of thousands of treatment centers. I think in California, Los Angeles alone, but all over the country. And what really differentiates, many years ago, what differentiated Beit Teshuva was because they didn't rely solely on insurance-based models and they relied on donation-based models. They were able to keep people in treatment much longer and create a community and create connection. And what they found was, and what now a lot of research is coming out, starting to talk about, is that all the treatment centers do the same thing. There's good clinicians, there's not good clinicians, right? There's groups, there's psychiatry, there's AA. What really differentiates one from the other is the ability for one to build a community. And that is what is so important in the treatment model and what Adam talks about, what he experienced, right? It's not his greatest memories from being a resident, and I mean, you can jump in at any time, are not necessarily in the therapy room, but at Shabbat on Friday nights, dancing around with your friend. We all had that visual, right? We had that visual of connection, right? We had that visual of like, okay, I want to be here and I'm joyous here. I'm not miserable. And that feeling, it sounds like, was big greater than any feeling you had when you were doing drugs. And so
100%.
And so creating that is the most important part clinically of treatment. And unfortunately, our insurance-based model doesn't always allow for that type of thing. I mean, when you look at AA or any of the anonymous programs, they try to create a community where you show up and you're accountable to another person. And hey, where are you? Missed you tonight, right? And that community, those connections, those relationships are really important. And the other part that I think, Beit Teshuva has done so uniquely was, and I say this, getting people off drugs is easy. It's easy business. I could lock anybody in a box for 30 days and get them off drugs. Keeping somebody off drugs is the hard business. So traditional rehabs are in the business of getting people off drugs and sending them back out in the world. 28 days, 30 days, cool. Keeping people off drugs requires giving them a purpose and meaning and community and passion for their lives that they don't want to go back, because the choice will always be there. But you have to build up a person enough and their life enough. So it's like, I don't need that. It's not worth the risk. Sure, I might be able to drink, but why risk it? I don't need to self-medicate. I have everything else that I am able to do and feel okay in my own skin. So that's the other real big part that I have seen relate clinically to dealing with addiction. I see the people in our chat, so I'm gonna look real quick. I want to offer people time to chime in if they have any thoughts, questions, for Adam in particular about his story. Anyone?
There's one note that came in that was asked. I see the person would love to hear your thoughts on how to return to shul communities after recovery when you are likely to be exposed to triggering places and people.
I'll let Joseph answer after I do, but I'll tell you from my perspective. I think what I have learned in 17 years of doing this is the shame and that concept is real in the moment. But when you walk into any community where people, in any community where this is not regularly talked about and you're willing to talk about it, people, you get flocked. People come to you because finally somebody is speaking the language and the truth. And Joseph, you want to jump on here?
Yeah, I think that's part of, like how are we as the Jewish communities creating safe spaces where if somebody's coming to a synagogue and they've just experienced treatment and recovery, that they're embraced, that the shame that Doug was just talking about, right, isn't the forefront of their mind, but it's how are they welcomed? How are they shown that other people in the community also struggle with maybe not addiction, but just the difficulties of the human experience. And the more authentic, the more we can speak of those things that are potentially stigmatized and pushed to the side of our communities, the more normalized they are, and the less they seem so difficult to overcome.
Can I share one story? So I will tell you guys about my wife and I actually both met at Beit Tshuva when we were residents. She's from the Valley and her father's Israeli, and at 21 she came into rehab, and her parents, were telling people that she was traveling through Europe. Okay. And, but that lie could only exist for so long. And after, a few months, 2-3 months, they started to be honest with, because like, how long do you travel through Europe for? They started to be honest with people. After they were honest with people, and this is 17 years ago, I cannot tell you how many lives they've saved because the people started calling them, I'm having a problem with my loved one. I'm having a problem with my loved one. What did you do with Avia? How did you help Avia? Where did you put her? Da, da, da. So by being honest about it, it's actually the exact opposite happens. Not only are you not like shunned, you're actually embraced completely because people aren't talking about this. It's an instant switch.
I'll add, I'll add, not only is it but like once we own our own stories, that shame and the burden that we feel like hiding something goes into this part about showing our passion and purpose, that, oh, actually I experienced this and now I might actually be able to help somebody else because of my experience, because of the difficulties that I've done. This is the same, like I talk about this where, March 17th, 2003, the day United States declared war on Iraq, was my bottom when I, checked myself into the UCLA psych ward after a 3-day manic episode. And my life's path, because of that, and the growth and the meaning that I've had to learn of how do I make sense of this experience, by me being able to speak about it more, others are able to share their vulnerability, their experiences, and it takes away the sting of that experience. Now it's been transformed into part of my calling and my deployment to help others as well.
Thank you. Thank you both for being so vulnerable in what you're sharing back too, and sharing your own personal stories, which I think I've taken away are a huge part of your work. You know, Doug, particularly you and your wife meeting in treatment, as you mentioned. There's a couple more things that came in. Everyone in the Jewish world is 1 degree removed from addiction and other serious mental health conditions. As soon as I open up about my recovery, people immediately share their stories. They just need someone to let them know it's okay to talk about it. So thank you, participant, for sharing that. And we absolutely agree with you. Go ahead, Doug.
It's not the Jewish community, it's every community. I mean, I think the latest stats, and this was, 3 or 4 years ago, the Surgeon General said 1 in 7 people in America and the coming up are going to be addicts. And he was only referring to substance use disorder. He was not referring to the mental health, right? Or the food addictions or anorexia or SLA, sex and love addiction. He was not, or the compulsive spending or the gambling addiction. So I think we are starting to realize that we live in an addictive culture, and our culture promotes and kind of not promotes, but addiction is something that Americans live with, and compulsivity. And to fight that is really hard. And that's where spirituality and relationships, community, and religion come into play, because in a lot of ways, they're the antidote to our addictive culture in society.
Yes, I agree with that. And I think going back to, sharing stories, it's something that I do constantly, all the time, because to the participant who wrote, you're 100% correct. The second someone opens up, the next person does. And we see that a lot, with people who have leadership roles in our Jewish community, right? When there's a rabbi or, a leadership member who stands up, or a professional in our community who opens up and shares their personal experience, particularly the rabbis, people can go to them. Rabbi Josh, you deal with it all day long, and you open and you share. And we hear stories about that constantly. And individuals saying, I didn't know I could talk to my rabbi about this. I didn't know I could talk to my congregation president about this topic. And so I think that goes back again to normalizing this topic and this conversation. So I say thank you to the individuals and the participants that are here with us and have shared and have asked questions. If anyone else has any last words to share, if not, I'll close it out with a special prayer, a Misha Be'er for recovery. Great. So I am just going to go ahead and I do. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I want to just add too, so Donna Hicks, if you ever read the book Dignity by Donna Hicks, she has a really important way of looking at how we interact as humans, right? We tend to, when we feel our dignity is attacked or violated, we tend to go into fight, flight, or freeze mode, right? It's survival mode. We're in that fear-based approach to making sure we're going to be okay, that our ego survives. And the thing is, there's a fourth approach that she talks about that we really try to emphasize too at Beit Tshuva, and that's connection. Right? The other opportunity to, in those moments where we feel when we're in survival mode, is to, how do we open up? How do we be vulnerable? How do we share our truth, our honesty, our experience? And when we do that, that's really what ultimately connects us to another person. And in a lot of ways, the problem with loneliness in our society is it's us versus them. It's a battle of limited resources, when in fact, how do we how can we shift that narrative and really become connected in that oneness that we are, this one big human family. And I think that's the real piece that Adam also referred to as well, is once we realize we're not just lone wolves without a pack, once we recognize that we're able to share a tribe, a people, to a community, that really changes our experience and helps us recover our identities ourselves.
That's great. Adam, a question was asked that I'm going to answer, but I want to see your answer too, is how do you stay strong during bad days?
Oh, yeah, thanks, Doug. I was typing out an answer, but I can just say it too, is that I pray a lot. I reach out to my peers. I give myself permission to not feel great all the time. I think that a big misconception I had about life was that if I feel bad, it means I'm doing it wrong. And the reality is that that's just a part of life. Not feeling good is just a part of life, and being able to realize that everybody doesn't feel good at times helps me know that I'm not alone, and that this is just a part of life. And I tell on myself too. I'll like actually say, you know what, I'm not having a great day, and I'll try to reach out to my peers, like I said. But I think that a big part is I just give myself permission to not feel great, because I'm allowed to. It's not against the rules to feel bad.
Right. So you have a community of people around you, that can support you and help you and stuff like that. I think that's great. And I think, we all know the image of the guy that's having a hard day, or girl, and they're sitting at the bar and they're drinking away their sorrows, right? And I think it's also, the question also is the same for the good days. Because oftentimes people don't realize that sometimes our guards go down and we think, oh yeah, we got this. And we forget about our recovery when everything's going well. So it's also important that community to be around us when things are going really well, because oftentimes the bad times I'm like, okay, I got it. I know, like the struggle, I'm into it. But it's when I let my guard down that sometimes I'm the most vulnerable.
Really good point.
That's a great point. Thank you. So if we have that, and I was just looking through the chat again, and it looks like, there's some great resources that are within the Jewish community that everybody can take a look at. The Jewish community is, I believe, unique in what we provide. I've done a lot of interfaith work, and I always come back to what the Jewish community has to offer. And Beit Teshuvah is an incredible resource that's here, that provides treatment, that provides community, that provides spirituality and faith. And on the Blue Dove website, there is also a listing that is available of all different kinds of Jewish mental health resources, digital communities, facilities, and resources. And you can divide in there by different areas, by different cities, by states, even international. We've done some work in Israel and in England, specific to teens too. So we encourage everyone to take a look at that. Know, how you can help someone and where you can. And helping somebody find the resource that they need is key for their recovery, and being an ally. Also, we currently, are in the middle of our high holiday resources, which is why we chose our high holidays, why we chose this time for this particular conversation. And the Blue Dove Foundation for all Jewish holidays creates different resources and tools. And particularly the 12 Steps of Atonement Anonymous is one. It's based on the 12 steps with also a Jewish lens in there. And so that's available here and to be shared. And Beit Teshuvah has high holiday services. So if that's something you're interested in taking a look at too, we encourage you to take a look at their website and reach out to them of what's available. And tonight, I'd like to leave you with a prayer of how we close a lot of the programs that we do. We always like to open with a rabbi sharing their thoughts about mental health in Judaism, as we did, and close with a prayer. And this is a Misha Berach for those in recovery. God, there are those among us who struggle with addiction. We offer this special prayer for those in recovery. Misha Berach to the one who blesses. May God bless you with the courage to conquer your cravings, the strength to stay far from temptations and from people who can lead you astray. Misha Berach to the one who blesses. May God hear the cry of your soul and bless you with the knowledge that you have the power to remake your life, to repair what has been destroyed, to recover what has been lost, to receive all the blessings that have been ignored. Misha Berach to the one who blesses. When you fall into despair, may God bless you with hope. If you stray from the path to recovery, may God show you how to begin again. May God renew your faith in yourself. May God open your eyes to all the miracles that surround you. Bless all those who are living in recovery. God, lead them to the path back to life, back to love, and back to you. Amen.
Amen.
And I thank you all for joining us this evening. And if there's anything else that we can do, please reach out, let us know, reach out to Beit Teshuva and all of the other Jewish resources that are available in our community, because we do offer a lot within the community and also outside of the Jewish community. There are, of course, many resources available. And we'll say good evening, Shana Tova. I hope everyone has a meaningful fast if you are fasting on Thursday. And thank you all.
Thank you
Thank
very much.
you.